I've been involved in this struggle, basically the struggle of Indigenous people for our recognition of our land rights ever since I was young. My father was the late George Manuel, who was at one time the president of the National Indian Brotherhood, also president of the Union of BC Indian Chiefs, and head of the World Council of Indigenous People. So he was involved at all different kinds of levels. And the hope is to continue to work together. There's Indigenous activists clean across the country, and most of us are introduced to them through the media because of blocking roads or occupying territories or in their territory, or asserting their rights, I guess, on the land, whether they be Aboriginal or treaty rights, and confronting, I guess, federal and provincial legislation regarding lands. And so you know them, but we're fragmented, obviously, because of geography. It's a very big country. And the other thing is we're separated by the assertion of provincial assertion of jurisdiction, and we're also, subject to the federal government strategy to try to avoid and ignore, honestly and genuinely recognizing our rights as Indigenous people. So. And because we're fragmented like that, we invariably run into being stalled. This group, Defenders, is basically the real genuine effort of activists, Indigenous activists from across Canada, to get together to basically share their experiences, and as well as talk about what kinds of common strategies and campaigns that they can get involved in supporting each other, and that's what's happening here. And so for me, the land totally consumes my thinking, simply because I know everything comes from the land. When elders say that, we sort of think, yeah, okay, what does that really mean? But everything here in Vancouver, even where we're sitting here, comes from the land. It's not a gift from outer space or anything like that. It's the economics and the human resources and that go into making what is here, and it's all based upon the fundamental rights that belong to Indigenous people. And our whole life has been, we've been enslaved through the impoverishment imposed on us by the federal and the provincial government, assuming and asserting that they have mutually and exclusively 100% of all the power to make decisions with regard to access and benefits to our land. And that's why we're poor. Somebody else takes the fundamental power of decision over the land where everything comes from, then you're going to be poor, and that can be measured in terms of the United Nations Human Development Index, where they do a study of our people, and we wind up at level 47. And when the United Nations does it amongst nation states, Canada wound up 3 years in a row number one. They're always up in the top 5. So the violation of our human rights, the degradation that we as our nieces and nephews and my own family experience with regard to this issue, is the difference between level 1 and level 47. That's what that measuring stick is there to tell you. And Canadians are systemically extremely racist, because that is not by calling us, swearing at us like dirty blah 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 Indians. that kind of individual racism. This is systemic racism because it has to do with the fundamental way this country has been organized. And it was organized under the decision where all decisions would be made mutually and exclusively between the federal and provincial governments. But Indian people in BC, way back when Pierre Trudeau wanted to patriate the Canadian Constitution in 1980, my dad, who was the president of the Union of BC Indian Chiefs, got really worried about that because Trudeau and Chrétien were the ones that introduced the white paper policy in 1969. So in 1980, he got really worried that they were going to maybe eliminate Indians from the Constitution and eliminate Section 9124, where that part where it says that the federal government's responsible for Indians and lands reserved for Indians. But anyways, so they set up, they decided to have a protest against that. And probably the most successful Indian protest in Canada. And they rented leased a train to go from Vancouver to Ottawa. It cost them $85,000 to lease that train, and they went across the country, and it was known as the Constitution Express. And then the following year, in 1981, they went to London, England, and lobbied the House of Lords and the House of Commons over there, and forced the British to demand that Indian rights be recognized in the Constitution. And that's how Section 35(1) in the Constitution got there. You know, a lot of times you hear the Prime Minister saying, oh, we're Canadians, we're such good people, we put, you know, this recognition of Aboriginal and treaty rights in the Constitution. That's a lie. If it wasn't for that train, if it wasn't for those people from the communities, you know, them activists like the ones in the Defenders taking that train, because there's only about 4 chiefs on the train, even though it's organized by the Union of BC Indian Chiefs. I was talking to Chief Wayne Christian. He was on that train just the other day about that, and, you know, but you know, it was full of them, full of people, you know, grassroots people. The land really means a lot in the sense that right now underneath this building, the Supreme Court of Canada recognized that Aboriginal title exists. You know, this isn't on an Indian reserve where we're at, you know, we're in Vancouver. It's an off reserve, but underneath this building, the Supreme Court of Canada recognized that there's Aboriginal title that belongs to the people from the Musqueam Squamish Nation, and that title, you know, has not been extinguished by the fact that somebody has fee simple land here, despite the fact that this person, they built a little hall called the Ukrainian Cultural Center. It doesn't matter. Aboriginal title still exists here because that's what the Supreme Court said, is that Aboriginal title was never extinguished. Under all these buildings, whether they be in Aboriginal or in treaty territory, exists the proprietary rights of us as Indigenous people, and we should be getting that money under Section 35(1). We shouldn't be begging for $1. You know, we shouldn't have to be reporting to the Department of Indian Affairs on a line-by-line item in the Constitution according to some darn contribution agreement. You know, we should be getting that money, and we should be deciding how we're going to deal with that ourselves. So the land in that sense is, for me, a really important fundamental issue. Canada has to change its position from extinguishment to recognition, you know, and that's a fundamental human right there. It's at the same level as in the United States as segregation and desegregation, or the recognition of apartheid or the abolishment of apartheid. It's recognition and extinguishment are at that same level. And Indigenous people themselves have a responsibility to learn about it, because that's where your economic security for your grandchildren exists. I would just tell them to get educated about it and get involved, because, you know, what I'm talking about here in British Columbia, you know, there's been the signing of the Tawasin Final Agreement. And we just heard earlier from Bertha Williams about how she's losing her Aboriginal title, how her land is being turned into fee simple, and how she's being basically Canadianized and assimilated into the Canadian system, something that our grandparents were worried about when they fought against the 1969 white paper policy. She's experiencing the implementation of that policy because a lot of young people from that community didn't know that that's what's happening, and they did the same thing to the people in the north. This isn't a game of Dungeons and Dragons. This is real. Like so often you wonder what happened to Pontiac, what happened to Tecumseh, what happened to Geronimo, what happened to Sitting Bull, and you sort of say, why couldn't we have done this and why couldn't we have done that? Why did we have to go down this road of such a terrible tragedy? Why couldn't we have done something? We're right at that road again. Right here in Canada, right now, there's no reason on God's green earth why the white guys at the provincial government would be negotiating with Indians in this province of British Columbia if we didn't own the land. But the real fundamental question is you need to resolve the macroeconomic issue, and that is ownership of the land. That's Section 35. That's the application of Aboriginal title and recognition of it through the federal and provincial governments on the ground. That's what needs to be done, and that's where young people have to realize is that that's their struggle. The question that there is a property right in every 2x4, despite the fact it may be logged provincially and that it may be by a white company and may be sold in the United States by Home Depot, we still have a property in that 2x4, and that's where our poverty is. Because the subsidy is that they can sell that 2x4 in Los Angeles for less than fair market value because they gypped us back here in British Columbia from it. They don't even know we're in there under contingent liability. You go in there and the province says that, we're going to resolve our economic liability for Indians through implementing the Nisga'a Agreement in the whole province, where we're going to extinguish all their title. So that means we still own the province, and therefore you can continue to invest in our BC savings bonds. You can still invest in the forestry industry, in the mineral, water, hydro industry, and we'll guarantee you we still own the province. And they're lying, and it's contingent liabilities, and it's really contingent on how smart the Indians are. We're real dumb, and we sort of sign the Tawasin Final Agreement or the Nisga'a Agreement. We're going to be gypped, and we're going to gyp the future generations of our people. So the young people need to realize is that this is real live, Dungeons and Dragons. There are real monsters out there in terms of lawyers that have been misleading a lot of our people in terms of, going back to court doing this. I've seen this in the terms of the BC Recognition Act. There's these treaty agreements. All this stuff is happening. You don't need to play any little arcade game about some little war in some space cadet area. You can just read your own history, what's happening here in terms of your own family and your own people, and carve out a new life for yourself here. Because now's the time. Because that's all this is coming to a head right now because of all this economic uncertainty that's been created. It's really hammering home on the BC government, and they want settlement. They're very concerned about the economic uncertainty that they're feeling, and they want some certainty. The Winter Olympics game and all this kind of stuff that they're playing on. They know they have to play ball with us. It's really, are we prepared to play ball with them? But we won. We also won internationally. Canada voted twice against the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. But 131 countries voted in favor of us. We beat them twice because Canada voted against us because they sit on the United Nations Human Rights Council. They voted against us in 2006 when the council first decided on this issue. And they voted against us, but they were defeated. Then in 2007, they voted against us again before the United Nations General Assembly. So we've been beating them. We beat them constitutionally. We beat them judicially. We've beaten them economically, and we've beaten them internationally. And nothing has changed. It's because the people aren't getting out on the land. The activists need to be supported. You need to get out. People need to get out in support of Indigenous people and our rights. Because now is the time to do it. That's what I say. So young people need to understand. They need to really respect, and have faith and have courage in defending what their great grandparents have given them.